And welcome to Going Green, show number 84. I'm Nick Anthony and the time is 20 past 2. We have changed our slot on the Going Green show as of this week. We're now on from 2 until 4 every Saturday. Following, of course, as always, Box of Neutrals. Following Nick Jackman, who did a great show this morning talking about what's on in Phuket. And indeed, there's a new show this evening, which is the Top 40. So stay tuned for that after the Going Green show. That'll be at 6 p.m. after Best of Breakfast. Okay, let's talk environmental news. I'm going to get a little heavy with you at the start here, and a little serious. I do spend a lot of time studying green news from all over the world. I get the combination of local detail from directly cleaning beaches and picking up lighters and bottle caps and studying the data, all the way up to large big picture surveys and big picture stories, articles, and indeed climate change news, such as the melting of the Arctic ice, or increasing temperatures, or wilder weather. Well, this week I'm going to start the show with a discussion of President Barack Obama's top environmental official, who has just been appointed to the head of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. It's a lady. Her name is Gina McCarthy, and she's indeed started her job on Tuesday with a speech, and has already very firmly taken on opponents of the administration's plan to crack down on global warming pollution. I'll follow that up then with a discussion that was an op-ed in this week's New York Times talking about Republicans. And indeed, this is an article written by 3 ex-EPA heads who talk about Republicans' interest in climate change, and indeed a call to all Republicans and all Americans that climate change indeed is real and is a real problem. Okay, so let's talk firstly about Gina McCarthy. Well, in her first speech as the head of the EPA, she told an audience gathered at Harvard Law School in Cambridge, Massachusetts, that curbing climate-altering pollution will spark business innovation, it will grow jobs, and indeed it will strengthen the economy. The message was classic Obama, who has long said that the environment and the economy aren't in conflict and has sold ambitious plans to reduce greenhouse gases as a means to jumpstart a clean energy economy. McCarthy signaled on Tuesday that she was ready for the fight, saying that the agency would continue issuing new rules regardless of claims by Republicans and industry groups that under Obama, the EPA has been the most aggressive and overreaching since it was formed more than 40 years ago. Can we stop talking about environmental regulations killing jobs, please, at least for today, she said, referring to one of the favorite talking points of Republicans and industry groups. Let's talk about this as an opportunity of a lifetime, because there are too many lifetimes at stake, she said, of efforts to address global warming. In Obama's first 4 years, the EPA has issued the first ever limits on toxic mercury pollution from power plants, regulated greenhouse gases for the first time, and updated a host of air pollution health standards. McCarthy acknowledged the agency had been the most productive in its history. That optimistic vision runs counter to claims by Republican lawmakers and some industry groups that more rules will kill jobs and fossil fuel industries. The EPA under Obama has already put in place or proposed new rules to reduce carbon pollution from cars and trucks, large smokestacks, and new power plants, regulations that McCarthy helped to draft as head of the Air Pollution Office. Next on its agenda is the nation's existing fleet of coal-fired power plants, the largest single source of carbon dioxide left. Obama, in a June speech, gave the agency until June 2014 to draft those regulations. It's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be hard, she said, of the road ahead. I don't think it's my job out of the gate to know what the path forward is. It's my obligation to let those voices be heard and listen to them. A panel in the Republican-controlled House recently signed off on a plan to cut the agency's budget by a third. Yet, last week, in a victory, a federal court dismissed challenges brought by Texas and power companies to the EPA's plans to regulate the largest sources of heat-trapping gases. Climate change will not be resolved overnight, she added, but it will be engaged over the next 3 years. That I can promise you. Very good article there on the new EPA head, whose name is Gina McCarthy, and she comes from the Pollution Department. Stay tuned, and I'll be back talking about a message from the Republicans and climate change, of all people.
Live 89.5, your island, your station. Feel good.
This is Nick Anthony. Welcome back to the Going Green Show. A new time slot here from 2 till 4 every Saturday. Let's continue this discussion on U.S. politics and climate change and environmental action. I think an important article that was written here by three actual previous heads of the Environmental Protection Agency. Four. William Ruckelshaus, who was 70 to 73. Lee Thomas from 85 to 89. Bill Riley from 89 to 93. And Christine Todd Whitman, who was 2001 to 2003. These four ex-EPA heads have written an article that's titled A Republican Case for Climate Action. It was published this week in the New York Times as an op-ed. Each of us took turns over the past 43 years running the Environmental Protection Agency in the USA. We served Republican presidents, but we have a message that transcends political affiliation. The United States must move now on substantive steps to curb climate change at home and internationally. There is no longer any credible scientific debate about the basic facts that our world continues to warm, with the last decade the hottest in modern records. And the deep ocean is warming faster than the Earth's atmosphere. The sea level is rising, Arctic ice is melting years faster than was previously projected. The costs of inaction are undeniable. The lines of scientific evidence grow only stronger and more numerous, and the window of time remaining to act is growing smaller. Delay could mean that warming becomes locked in. A market-based approach, like a carbon tax, would be the best path to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but that is unachievable in the current political gridlock in Washington. Dealing with this political reality, President Obama's June Climate Action Plan lays out achievable actions that would deliver real progress. He will use his executive powers to require reductions in the amount of carbon dioxide emitted by the nation's power plants and spur increased investment in clean energy technology, which is inarguably the path we must follow to ensure a strong economy along with a livable climate. The President also plans to use his regulatory power to limit the powerful warming chemicals known as hydrofluorocarbons and encourage the United States to join with other nations to amend the Montreal Protocol to phase out these chemicals. The landmark international treaty, which took effect in 1989, already has been hugely successful in solving the ozone problem. Rather than argue against his proposals, our leaders in Congress should endorse them and start the overdue debate about what bigger steps are needed and how to achieve them, both domestically and internationally. Climate change puts all our progress and our successes at risk. If we could articulate one framework for successful governments, perhaps it should be this. When confronted by a problem, deal with it. Look at the facts, cut through the extraneous, devise a workable solution, and get it done. We can have both a strong economy and a livable climate. All parties know that we need both. The rest of the discussion is either detail, which we can resolve, or purposeful delay, which we should not tolerate. Mr. Obama's plan is just a start. More will be required. But we must continue our efforts to reduce the climate-altering pollutants that threaten our planet. The only uncertainty about our warming world is how bad the changes will get, and how soon. What is most clear is that there is no time to waste. A very good op-ed there in the New York Times this week, written by 4 Republicans who were all previously heads of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. First time I've seen a call from Republicans to accept that climate change is indeed a fact. It's a slap in the face to climate change deniers, which mostly come from the Republican camps. And it may actually be the ice that breaks the political gridlock, particularly in the Senate, as President Obama starts to push through his climate change plans. So this may be, just like we have in the Arctic, a breaking of the ice and possibly a way forward. It would be very good news. So stay tuned over the next few weeks as we continue this discussion on America's answer and action to climate change problems, and indeed the President's own remit to increase pressure on CO2 emitters, particularly coal-fired power plants. Stay tuned. This is Nick Anthony. We're on Going Green, show number 84.
Live 89.5, your island, your station.
And welcome back. We've been talking a lot on the station over the last week about the Go Eco Dive event, which is taking place on August the 13th. And that's in honor of the Queen Mother's birthday. That's on August the 12th. And there's expected to be a massive turnout. They're indeed doing three things. They're doing an underwater cleanup, which is on the 13th. Last year, I was a diver and involved in the cleanup, which had about 550 scuba divers, and a fantastic effort in terms of the trash that was collected, the awareness that was driven through that event, and the follow-up to that has been now this event in a couple of weeks' time, and there will be, again, a record turnout of divers. There'll be a number of new boats joining. They're extending the area outside of Koh Racha and Chalong Bay down to Phi Phi also, and it's being combined with a massive West Coast beach cleanup, which will take also on August the 13th, and that will be in the afternoon from 4:30 in the afternoon on all beaches across the West Coast. Well, let's take a listen to Kerry Leach, who's the Go Eco coordinator for this event. She's done a great job at managing to pull together so many boats, so many people, coordinating with the government and also the Marine Department. So well done to Kerry. Now, she'll be on the show next Saturday ahead of that event. So we'll be asking Kerry for an update in terms of how many people, how many boats, how to be involved. And also next Saturday, I'll give you a full update on the beach cleaning schedules that are taking place up and down the West Coast in honor of the Queen's birthday. So let's take a listen to Kerry Leach. This is a interview published this week, just a couple of days ago, by Kirsty Meyer. It's available to view on both YouTube under Go Eco, or you can go to the PhuketNews.com and follow the links through the TV programs, and you'll find it there in the schedules. So, without further ado, this is Kerry Leach talking about the Go Eco event. Let's take a listen.
Aqua Dive Centre down here at CB's Diving. Now, how you doing, Kerry?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Now, a bit of personal questions first.
Sure.
How long have you been on the island for?
10 years altogether.
10 years.
Yeah.
That is a long time.
It's quite a while.
Yeah.
Long enough to know the diving quite well and know a few people on the island.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, have you seen a lot of changes in the diving world over here since you've been here?
Yeah, I mean, around the time of the tsunami, it was really booming. When I first turned up 2003, 2004, all the way through to maybe 2007, it's really good. But in more recent years, I think some of the operators have closed down, or, it's
Really?
it has got a little bit smaller, or there's a lot more dive centres, and it's kind of diluted the customers out as well, diluted the business out as well. But yeah, it's okay. It's still good.
Yeah. South Aqua Dive Centre.
Yeah.
They're also involved in the event, which is Go Eco Phuket.
That's right, yeah.
Cleanup, which is happening on the 13th of August for 4 days.
That's right.
So tell us more about this event.
Okay, what's happening is the main event will be on the 13th of August. This is the one where we want volunteers and participants from the public to come and join us. Go Eco Phuket itself is formed of a lot of the dive businesses around Phuket. We all got together about a year ago now, and we said, okay, we need to do something about Phuket's reefs. There's problems with anchors being dropped,
Right.
some of the moorings not placed correctly.
Right.
And we just want to make sure we're protecting our business, actually.
Right.
So we all got together, and we, of course, had the 30th of September 2012 cleanup, which was a brilliant success. We couldn't have hoped for that to go better.
Right.
So this year, the government actually contacted us us
Yeah.
and invited us to come on board.
Yeah.
They want to make 4 days out of it.
Yeah.
They're doing a bike ride on the 4th of August, a cycle ride from Sapan Hin to to Sorakal Stadium in Phuket.
So they're
Town.
making us work for the reefs as well.
But they've got some local schools coming to the stadium there, and they're highlighting recycling. They're making the Queen's Cipher. They're making it large on a football pitch, so that there'll be a helicopter flyover taking photos of it, and that will be made out of recycled materials.
Wow.
Just to raise awareness to the
Yeah,
kids
yeah.
that, you know, look at this plastic, this is not good, and there's a lot of it, and a lot of it in the ocean. So they're doing that, and then also the 13th is our thing as well. And then on the 14th, they're doing an after-event party. The extra day, I'm not sure where that came from, but
gonna be
apparently
funny.
it's Friday. Maybe it's the press conference. There's a press conference this Friday.
So who is Go Eco Phuket?
And really the dive businesses. So there's myself, Sabakwa Dive Centre. There's Seabees Diving, where we are now. Simil and Queen Dive Centre in Patong, that's run by, some people might actually know T, who was also one of the organisers last year, and he deals a lot with the Thai side of things for us, which is great. With the Navy and the Phuket Marine Biological Centre, things like this. There's many other companies, Phuket Scuba Club, Oceanic Dive Centre, Dive Asia, Sea Fun. All the companies have come together to make this happen.
So how significant is Phuket's coral reefs sort of internationally?
Well, Richelieu Rock, for example, it's a little bit north of the Similan Islands. That was rated, I think it was 2007, as one of the top 10 dive sites in the world.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. So people know about Thailand, and they know about Thailand's diving. Now, unfortunately, I was recently in Germany, and what I heard from many German divers is, yeah, but we don't come to Thailand anymore because, you know, I don't think the reefs there are so good anymore. They are at the moment, but we need to protect them. And while the press coverage and stuff is good of an event like this, longer term, we don't want to be picking up the rubbish out of the sea.
Exactly.
What we're trying to do here is raise awareness with events like this, and then we take that awareness to the government with evidence of this is what we're seeing underwater, and take it from there.
So how do you go about cleaning the reef?
Okay, we have all the dive centres organising each of their boats. Those dive centres with boats are putting their boat out on this day for the cleanup. The Marine Police have asked that no other boat is out there at Ratchayai, Ratchanoi or Coral Island for their own business on this day.
Yeah.
They're all going out to clean up. It's purely voluntary.
Right.
Okay, so what we're doing is there'll be a presentation a week before the event, which will be to the boat managers, and I'm probably giving this presentation just to brief them on you can't just rip things up from the ocean. Okay,
Right.
some rubbish is part of the reef now, and that's safe to leave there.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
How do you go about cleaning it?
Because sometimes if there's just a piece of fishing net or something and it's been there a long time, coral actually grows on it.
Wow.
And then it becomes part of the habitat. This is in Indonesia, for example.
So hopefully no like cams or anything like that.
There we are. That's a very good article there. Very good interview by Kirsty Meyer with Kerry Leach. The sound quality wasn't fantastic, but you can go to the PhuketNews.com, take a look at the TV section, and you'll find there in the archives under the latest features the full interview. It's an 11-minute interview. And indeed, Kerry will be on our show here on the Going Green next Saturday as we get an update on how many boats are involved, how many divers. Anybody who wants to be involved can listen up and get involved. And also we'll be talking about the beach cleaning schedule. Very good news. Well done to Kerry. This is their the second underwater cleanup, and indeed striving to make Phuket a greener and cleaner island. This is Nick Anthony. You're listening to The Going Green, show number 84.
The 80s, 90s, noughties and now. Phuket Live 89.5.
This is Nick Anthony, Going Green, show number 84. Let's take a quick look at some international green news, particularly in relation to climate change, as it's been a topic for the first hour's discussion today. I've been talking about the new head of the EPA in America, her talk on Tuesday, inauguration speech, and also an op-ed article from the New York Times that is a message from Republican ex-EPA heads called to climate deniers to say there's no place for climate denial. In fact, climate change is here today, and Republicans are just as interested as Democrats in combating climate change and being honest about today's effects on the planet. A very interesting article from the Republicans, given their position in the Senate and the fact that they've been blocking most things and indeed cutting the budget just recently of the EPA itself. On climate change, indeed, the BBC had an interesting piece this week talking about how shifts in the climate are strongly linked to increases in violence around the world. US scientists have found that even small changes in temperature or rainfall correlated with a rise in assaults, rapes and murders, as well as group conflicts and war. The team says the current projected levels of climate change, the world is likely to become a more violent place. This has been published in Science magazine. Marshall Burke, who's from the University of California, Berkeley, said that there is a relationship that we've observed across time and across all major continents around the world. The relationship we find between these climate variables and conflict outcomes are often very large. The researchers looked at 60 studies from around the world with data spanning hundreds of years, and they report a substantial correlation between climate and conflict. Their examples included increase in domestic violence in India during recent droughts and a spike in assaults, rapes and murders during heat waves in the US. The report also suggests rising temperatures correlated with larger conflicts, including ethnic clashes in Europe and civil wars in Africa. Mr. Burke said that one of the main mechanisms that seems to be at play is changes in economic conditions. We know that climate affects economic conditions around the world, particularly agrarian parts of the world and the food supply. There's lots of evidence that changes in economic conditions affect people's decisions about, for example, whether or not to join a rebellion. He said there could also be a psychological basis, because some studies suggest that heat causes people to be prone to aggression. It's a major priority for future research to distinguish between what is going on in each particular situation. Scientists say that the current projected levels of climate change is likely to become a more violent place, with a 2-degree rise in global temperature that would see personal crimes increase by about 15% and group conflicts rise by as much as 50% in some regions. Quite amazing. So there we are. We're becoming a more violent place with the climate change. And also, whilst I'm on the topic of climate change, there was a very good piece written about how surfing is indeed threatened by climate change, partially because the byproduct of burning fossil fuels is ocean acidification, which threatens to upend the entire balance of the oceans and wipe out some of the world's premier surf destinations in the process. As we pump increasing amounts of carbon and pollution into the atmosphere, it's not just wreaking havoc on air quality. The oceans are the largest carbon sinks and absorb 1/4 of the carbon dioxide emitted every year. The more carbon dioxide absorbed, the more acidic the water becomes. As a result, plankton that form the basis of the food chain and shellfish like oysters and clams no longer have the calcium carbonate needed to form their shells and exoskeletons, which pose a tremendous risk to all marine life. The oceans are also the primary source of heat absorption for the planet. An analysis from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, show that more than 90% of the warming that's happened on Earth over the past 50 years has occurred in the oceans. Combined, these warmer and more acidic waters also spell catastrophe for corals, which rely on calcium carbonate to survive. Coral reefs are fragile, exceedingly sensitive to variations in chemistry, and with a narrow and specific temperature window in which they can survive. When the effects of ocean warming and acidification are added to marine pollution and overfishing, scientists expect that 90% of all coral reef ecosystems to be threatened with extinction by 2030. Since coral reefs produce many of the world's finest surf breaks, loss of reefs has serious implications for surf spots across the globe. Acidification and warming are already taking their toll on iconic ecosystems and the world-class surfing they produce. The Great Barrier, for example, in Australia, has been badly affected by this. If the coral reefs and surrounding environments die, then the magic feeling of those surf breaks also will die. Same thing here on Phuket. We continue to see degradation of our corals. We continue to see marine pollution, overfishing, and our own surf breaks are also at risk as our coral dies and our reefs diminish. So another heed there to continue to push hard for conservation across Phuket, and indeed such as the Go Eco event, awareness on some of the problems the coral reefs face, and for us to do our best in trying to preserve what we have. This is Nick Anthony, listening to Going Green, show number 84. Stay tuned, I'll be back in just a moment.
The 80s, 90s, noughties and now. Phuket's Live 89.5.
And this is Nick Anthony. Welcome back to the Going Green Show, and we're on show number 84. Let's continue with a bit of international news, and then we'll talk a little bit about this weekend's Phuket newspaper. Firstly, some good news, and I'm not all bad news on the Going Green Show. The good news this week was out of Korea, where 3 dolphins that have been kept illegally in a Korean aquarium are finally getting to stretch their fins in the wide open ocean, thanks to a collaborative effort of animal rights groups worldwide. The Korean Animal Welfare Association actually was able to release these 3 dolphins. 2 of them were able to reunite with the very same pods that they'd been stolen away from years earlier. The dolphins, named Sampal, Chunsam, and Jaedol, were all caught and sold illegally in South Korea. Sampal and Chunsam were kept at an aquarium called Pacific Land on Jeju Island, and Jaedol was housed at the Seoul Zoo. After local courts ruled that their captures were illegal, the Korean Supreme Court and Seoul Mayor Park Won-soon ordered the 3 dolphins to be released. The Animal Welfare Association then went to work with the Dolphin Project to facilitate the rehabilitation process, utilizing the proven methods established by Rick O'Barry, the Dolphin Project's director and star of the 2009 documentary The Cove. Sampal's story has received the most attention so far. When the 3 dolphins were moved from the aquariums to a sea pen in May, Sampal found a hole in the net and escaped on June the 22nd. It was only 5 days until she had rejoined the pod she'd been taken from 4 years earlier. Sampal's story lends more credence to the idea that she and her kind should be accorded basic rights and treated with respect, as thinking, feeling beings, the Dolphin Project's associate Laura Bridgman told the Huffington Post. It's about time we humans begin to see this. Chunsam, who's a female bottlenose dolphin, and Jaedol, a male, were still in the pen when their official release date came on July the 18th, and both were given GPS tags to track their locations. At 4:15 p.m., the net was cut open so they could swim free. Jaedol left after 20 minutes and took Chunsam a little longer, but she finally swam for open water at 4:40 p.m. Jaedol has yet to join a pod, but the Korea Times reported that while he is still in the pen, a number of wild dolphins appeared 3 different times to play with him. There we are, very good news. Well, the successful rehabilitation and release project highlights the feasibility of returning cetaceans to their natural habitat after a time in captivity. Rick O'Barry told the Dolphin Project in a blog post that dolphins seemed ready to go, mentally as well as physically. Well, that is good news. Unfortunately, not on such good front. Tanzania continues to see massive slaughter of their elephants. Particularly, Tanzania is now one of the leading exporter of bloody ivory over the last number of years. And currently it's estimated that 10,000 elephants are gunned down in Tanzania annually. And conservationists say that Tanzania has for years been one of Africa's worst elephant slaughterhouses. Well, this last week, there was an arrest of 2 Tanzanian police officers and 8 other people in possession of elephant tusks. And it is an indication that efforts to conserve and protect elephants in this African nation indeed could be a tough task, particularly as it's the Tanzanian police that has been complicit in this. Now, the famous game reserve where these guys were operating out of was 55,000 square kilometers, which makes it the biggest wildlife game reserve in Africa. It's called the Kisarawe. And wildlife conservationists are worried that this national park could become a transit route for tusks from elephants killed inside the Selous Game Reserve or areas surrounding the reserve and other parts of southern Tanzania. The arrest of the 2 police officers was reported just a few days after prison officers were arrested in northern Tanzania's wildlife-rich Manyara region, loaded with live animals and high-caliber guns. I also read something yesterday that following President Obama's visit to Tanzania, it looks like the US is going to support the elephant conservation program with a number of drones that they can fly above the park and hopefully help to identify poachers and indeed encroachment from locals. And lastly, on the international front, the WWF has, whilst we're talking about Africa, warned of an environmental disaster and permanent conflict if a British firm is allowed to begin drilling for oil inside the Virunga National Park. It's actually the home to rare mountain gorillas, and it's a very interesting spot. It's in the Congolese government who currently controls it, and they've given an exploration right to Soko International. There was another group that had been given a concession within the national park, which is Total from France. However, they've now agreed to not continue with any oil drilling within the national park. However, this British company is. So the WWF making this public and trying to stop oil exploration inside one of the last bastions for rare mountain gorillas. I do hope that they are successful. Stay tuned. This is Nick Anthony, Going Green, show number 84. Time is 3:36. I'll be back in a moment, and we'll take a look at this weekend's edition of the Phuket News for Green News.
Live 89.5, your island, your station.
Your island, your station. Nick Anthony back on at 3:41 on this Saturday afternoon. It's grey out there. There's likely to be some rain, so do take care if we have some storms like we've had the last 2 days. Pull over on the side of the road if the rain does get heavy. It normally doesn't take too long and it'll pass over. Let's take a look at this weekend's edition of the Phuket News. Always a great read. Comes out on Friday afternoons. Available in newsstands across Phuket at a very modest cost of 20 baht per copy. Firstly, they talk a little bit about China heat wave that's just run through northern China in particular. And even in Shanghai, there was 8 consecutive days where the temperature was above 38 degrees with a temperature of a high of 40.6 degrees, which topped its previous high of 40.2 in 1934 and is now the highest record in Shanghai since records began in 1873. Page 11 there on the Phuket News. There was, on environmental news, there were earth movers seized down in Cape Panoa by officials from the Natural Resources and Environmental Crime Suppression Division. They seized 3 backhoes and a roller that was being used to level a piece of land that officials believe is within a national forest reserve. That's on page 4. Also on environmental news, page 5, an article about waste on Ratchayai, which is an island on the south end of Phuket, how it remains a hot topic. There was a second meeting at the Rawai Orbiter office, the local government offices, to discuss wastewater systems, beach encroachment, illegal garbage dumps, and an illegal concrete bridge that is restricting canal flow. This is a big push that the government has been trying on Ratchayai, as until recently they have particularly an environmental blight where garbage and waste has not been taken off the island, but instead buried and dumped in other parts of the island. I'm very sad, but it's good to see that work is indeed being done. There's a feature in the live section on page 2 from Jody Hooton, who went to Tiger Kingdom. It's a new tourist trap here and now in Kathu, not so far from the Phuket News studio. And indeed, it's a copycat of the Chiang Mai branch of Tiger Kingdom, where you can actually go in and lie down with these tigers, have your photo taken by the tigers. Well, tourists, whether it be a tiger or a sea eagle or a slow loris, if they're not thinking, then they love to have their picture taken by it, or perhaps if they don't know any better. But really, in today's day and age, animals should be left to the wild and should be not used for profit, and particularly tigers, where they're bred purely in captivity, they're held in captivity, and there have been instances where tigers indeed have been drugged. There's no insinuation that the tigers here on Phuket are indeed drugged or restrained in any other way other than just being simply domestic tigers that have been bred with people and they've been living around people. However, I still don't agree with the caging of animals and the systematic abuse of them for profit. That's a good article there from Jody, with a fairly open mind there on the Tiger Park. And lastly, on page 6, we've been talking a lot about the Go Eco cleanup that's coming up, and there are some details about that, as well as the corresponding beach cleanups, which will take place on August the 13th. Phuket News available on newsstands island-wide. Do pick up a copy and enjoy a weekend read.
The 80s, 90s, noughties and now. It's Phuket's Live 89.5.
And Nick Anthony back with you for a close-up here on the Going Green, show number 84. But before we do wrap things up today, I'm going to talk a bit about the beach cleaning schedule this following week. There was this morning, as every Saturday, there was a Clean the Beach boot camp down in Naihan Beach by Crix Luther. You can take a look at Crix's Krixluther, Crix Luther on Facebook, and he does it every Saturday morning. So if you're feeling inspired next Saturday for a bit of exercise for an hour and some beach cleaning, go down and hang out with Crix and learn something a little different. Also this week on Tuesday, which is the 6th of August, at 4 p.m, there's a cleanup on the south end of Kamala Beach. That's near the school taxi stand. And slightly further south, again on Rockfish End, right in front of Rockfish, is a cleanup at 9 a.m. on Thursday the 8th. So Tuesday at 4 p.m. and then Thursday at 9 a.m., both there in the southern end of Kamala Beach. Speaking of Kamala Beach, the Kamala Green Club has just raised around initially 60-odd thousand baht, which will fund full-time beach cleaning on Kamala Beach by two professionals, every day from now until high season, up into to the end of November. It's very exciting news. It's the first beach now to put in full-time beach cleaning. They're actually hired by the local government, so there is a knowledge transfer from SEEK and the Kamala Green Club to those new employees by the Orbiter, yet it's actually being paid for by the hotels. This is a model that we're looking to use across the west coast of Phuket. We've also had good news from the Orbiter, who has said that they indeed will budget for full-time beach cleaning from the Kamala Orbiter starting next year. And there's no reason why we cannot continue this program and get next year, 2014, full-time beach cleaners on every West Coast beach. That would be a great thing to reduce the amount of trash in the oceans, to keep our beaches clean, and to further promote sustainable tourism here on Phuket. You can now find green clubs popping up on Facebook. Kamala Green Club I mentioned, Naiton Green Club, Naithon Green Club is now running, and also Bangtao Green Club on Facebook is also running. So you can take a look at any of those three, join up, and keep an eye on their own beach cleaning activities and get involved. It's great for Phuket, and indeed it's very positive for our marine animals and making sure we have a healthy ocean. Okay, lastly, before I do wrap, I just want to say thank you to the Cherry Bean. It's a new coffee shop down there in Katu on the way from the Phuket News Station and from Tesco towards Patong, just before you go up to Patong Hill on the left-hand side. It's a brand new coffee shop, very interesting design. They use all recycled materials. They use drum cymbals as lights. They're using wooden electrical spools as tables. And indeed, they've got local Thai coffee, and very good it is, Arabica from the north. So that's the Cherry Bean. Thanks for great coffee today, and good luck with your new business. Thanks for joining us here on Going Green, show number 84. I do hope you've enjoyed it. You've noticed there's been a time change. We're now from 2 till 4 on Saturdays. So catch us next Saturday from 2 p.m. And this podcast will be up during the week. Or you can go to the Phuket News radio website, and you can see the podcast, indeed, from last week's show, already up if you missed it. Coming up now, we've got the best of breakfast from Sam and Kirsty. It'll take us through till 6 p.m. And then we have a new show starting today called the Asia Pop 40. That's running from 6 till 9, followed by Saturday Night Fever. Asia will line up from 9 until 12. In the morning, we have a repeat of the Pop 40 show. That runs from 9 until 12. And then we have the weekend brunch, a slightly different lineup. Weekend brunch starting with Jason tomorrow at midday until 3 p.m. Then a replay of the Phuket News radio and a review of the newspaper from 3 till 4. Mellow Moments, the same from 4 to 6. And Sunday Night Chill now comes in at 6 to 9 p.m. It's followed by non-stop music taking us through to Monday morning. I do hope yours is a fantastic weekend. Be safe out there on the roads. Be safe out there on the beaches. Wear your helmet And indeed, when you're swimming, follow the advice of lifeguards and be very careful of rips. We've got a weather warning in place through till Tuesday, so expect some more rain and some bumpy seas. This is Paolo Nutini, A Last Request. Enjoy your weekend.